Good afternoon. I'm here with my guest, Jennifer Martelli. Welcome.
Thank you, Doug.
Jennifer was born and raised in Revere, Mass. Revere?
Revere.
Okay.
Severe.
And attended Boston University and the Warren Wilson MFA program for writers. Her chapbook, Apostrophe, was published in 2010. Most recently, Martelli's poetry and prose have been appeared in the Up the Staircase Quarterly. I was in that one.
Oh, yeah.
Back, yeah. Gravel, Rogue Agent, Green Mountains Review. She is a recipient of the Massachusetts Cultural Council grant in poetry and the associated editor of the Compassion Project, who I interviewed, Laurette Folk, who runs that, right?
Yes. Yep. I was here.
Her first full-length of collection of poetry, The Uncanny Valley, is forthcoming later this year, published by Big Table with our friend Robin Stratton, who also had the privilege of interviewing. Now, in an interview I read, you said that you talk in the plainest language possible. So you have no problems with quote-unquote accessible poetry?
No, not at all. For years, it's so funny. Early on in grad school, this was a problem. So many professors would say, this is beautiful, but we don't understand what it's about. And I think there was a part of me that felt for poetry to be deep or, important, it had to be inaccessible in a way. So the language was very, half the time I don't think I even understood what I was saying. And then I went completely the other way. I went almost to the point, I don't want to say it's prosy, I hope it isn't, but just trying to just tell a story. I'm just talking to you. I want to tell you about this thing that happened to me. I learned that from the poet Marie Howe. So, and I think I've come a little bit more the other way, I'm coming back a little bit to the middle, trying to find sort of that balance between a heightened language that's beautiful and has a little bit of artifice to it, and then just communicating with people. But it's a razor's edge sometimes for me.
A what?
A razor's edge.
Yeah. Now, you also noted that you view Bishop, Valentine, Howe, and others as an influence. What is the link between these poets that you think is attractive to you?
I think first and foremost there are strong women poets. It's a strong female voice in all of them.
Do you have any male poets you like?
Yeah, I do. It's funny, though. It's funny you say that. This is going to sound very strange. Over the past 6 months, if I were to buy a new book of poetry, a lot of times, if you're entering a manuscript contest, the fee is buy a book from, one of our authors. I was just buying only women writers. And it didn't start consciously. Let me say that much. But yes, all right, male writers, I love male poets, Robert Haas, love him. The length of that line, that line is beautiful. He's an extremely accessible poet. I love Thomas Lux. He's brilliant. His short lines are brilliant. I love Tony Hoagland. He was a teacher of mine, probably one of the smartest men I know. But back to Bishop and Valentine and Howe, and they all write very differently. But again, I'm attracted to this very strong female voice. What I love about Bishop, what I started to, and then this does trickle down to Jean Valentine and Marie Howe, is I love the way Bishop, especially in Geography 3, with her poems, she's talking to you. It's specific, in the poem, One Art, where she's coming to these places of discovery right in the poem, and she's surprised in the poem. That just works for me.
Okay. Yeah. Now, I noticed you studied at Boston University. I was there in the 70s, and you got your MFA at Warren Wilson MFA program. Did you, who were some of the noted folks you studied with who influenced you? You mentioned Marie Howe?
Yeah, I studied with her when I lived in, not at Warren Wilson, though she was there. Prior to Warren Wilson, I lived in Cambridge in the early to mid-90s, and you could almost, for a lot less money, design, at that time, an amazing MFA program if you didn't want to actually go through an MFA program. You know, major poets were living there, and they would, for, you know, $100 have a workshop in their kitchen for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
So, you know, she was there, Lucy Brock-Broido, Mary Carr, Stephen Kramer, and just go to their house.
Kramer here a long
Yeah,
time ago,
yeah. He was at Mass Poetry,
Yeah.
if you heard him read. You know, I mean, when I look back now, I'm like, wow, you know, that was amazing. What an amazing time. But when I was at Warren Wilson, I loved all my teachers, but studying with Ellen Bryant Voigt was...
Ellen who?
Ellen Bryant Voigt.
Yeah.
She just got a MacArthur
Okay.
award. She's up in Vermont. That's where she lives. I think she was the poet laureate there. I'm not sure if she still is, but brilliant woman. I mean, her notes, I mean, at the time when I was at Warren Wilson, email was just, you know, in its infancy. Yeah, so we were like mailing each other. That's how it worked there. You know, you'd only go down for a few weeks. And the letters I have from her, I mean, it's like a textbook. It's like a textbook. So, I mean, she's somebody who really stands out.
Okay. Now, you're the associate editor for the Compassionate Project, right?
Yep.
Like I was saying, Laurette Folk
Yep.
was a. What is the project about briefly, and your role there?
Well, the project, this is really Laurette's,
Yeah.
you know, baby. It's basically what she is trying to do. Laurette is a jack of many trades. She's a writer, novelist. She's a poet, also a visual artist. So she sort of created this anthology online and in life. You know, you can go and see these installations of art. And what she wants to bring to life is compassion and action, not just witnessing, you know, here's a poem about a sad situation, or here's a painting about this horrible thing that happened, but actual, you know, this is how I reacted to tragedy to make it better, to ease suffering. And I remember one of the first essays she had in one of the, I think it was the first issue, if I can remember. It was this forgiveness project, which is out of England, which brings together victims of violent crime and the perpetrators.
So what's your role there?
My role as the poet, she'll send me the poetry that's submitted. I don't necessarily get the final say, but I'm a reader. I give my input. I love this poem. You've got to accept this poem, or these really didn't make it. So I'll get the poems. She'll send them to me. I go through them. I, you know, do my critiques on them and send them back to her. And Jennifer Jean does the same thing also.
Okay.
You know.
Sure.
So it's really been great because I mean, we're starting to see these amazing poets submit to this, and all the proceeds, you know, go to different what am I trying to say?
Agencies.
Agencies, exactly. So there is a submission fee, but it's not just to maintain the.
There wasn't originally, because I know I was in it.
No, I don't think there was originally, but like for the artwork.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a wonderful project.
By the way, you know, I was very flattered because a student did a sculpture based on my poem. Yeah,
Yes.
at Middlesex.
Yes.
Was it Middlesex College? Or,
No, it was up at North Shore.
North Shore Community College, right?
Yeah, up in Danvers. I saw it. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it was
yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
So you have a new collection coming out, or Big Table Publishing, Robin Stratton's brainchild. What was the germ of the idea for this Uncanny Valley?
That's
That's the name of your collection.
That's the name of the collection.
Should be out soon, right?
Yeah, in fact, I have the proof here. Robin's sending me a new proof, so probably by the end of June, it should be out, which is so exciting. The original title for this was Malocchio, which is Italian. It means evil eye. And you might have seen, people wear the Italian horn. That's to ward off the Malocchio. The evil eye is envy.
Envy.
Yeah. So that was the original title, and I guess in a way you could say it's biographical. In its essence, it goes back to growing up in Revere in an Italian community, until now adulthood, beyond middle age, I guess, in a way. Motherhood, marriage, love, writing. But I think what it started with was just, again, how to navigate oneself in the world, which I find incredibly hard. What's my role here, in the world? So that was Malocchio, and when I sent it to Robin, being the genius editor that she is, she said, nobody's going to know what Malocchio is. She said, I can't even pronounce it. So I said, okay, there's a poem that has the Malocchio charm in it, and it has the term, the Uncanny Valley. And that's
a great title.
It is a great title. It is a great title because the Uncanny Valley is an actual thing in aesthetics. It's that point when you're looking at something, say like a Stepford wife robot, and you say it looks kind of like the person, but there's something off. Like a pod person or like that. And it's this feeling of discomfort that you feel, it looks right, but it's not right. And that pretty much describes, my 54 years here, looks right, but doesn't really feel right.
I think that's the human condition.
I think so too. So that's
now, you sent me a number of these fine poems, and one I was looking at, Deviltide, is paints a nefarious picture of the tide and these unforgiving rocks, the lament of seagulls. And at least the way I interpreted it, perhaps I'm wrong, is a metaphor for how we cut ourselves off. And maybe you could talk a bit about that.
Well, it was that poem, which is a prose poem, and
where was you were inspired? Was that at Revere? That particular?
It's sort of a conglomerate of a lot of the beaches. I've always lived by a beach. I always will.
Yeah.
I grew up on Revere Beach. I live in Marblehead. There's a beach there. There's Lynn Beach in between in Swampscott, and then there's Gloucester. All the beaches up there. So it became somewhat of a conglomerate. There's a nod to Sylvia Plath with Egg Rock, and I'm rediscovering her again. So, but yes, what it really deals with is this whole idea, as you say, being cut off, having to say goodbye to someone who might not necessarily be dead.
Yeah.
That sometimes, as hard as that is, that's easy because they are dead, but just to say this person just isn't in my life, or I'm not in somebody's life, I almost had to will them dead in a way, or they had to will me dead, and that was sort of that started the poem. And I think sometimes, I know for me, when I'm writing a poem, if there's a strong connection, all the images come. I get you know what I mean? I almost like the images are handed to me in that way, and that
great images.
Yeah.
We were talking about you growing up in Revere and some of the background, and we talk about Kevin Carrier, we interviewed here, a fine poet, who just got tenure. I mean,
yes, he did.
You got I don't know tenure, but a tenure-track position.
Tenure-track position, well-deserved.
Well-deserved. And he grew up in Revere, and you knew his family, not him necessarily, and Roland Murillo. Perhaps you can just talk a bit about that, the Revere.
Well, I mean, as I said to you, it's funny. And this is sort of unfair because it's really just my experience. Growing up, there was not a literary community. There was not really, I mean, it's truly a working class city. And a lot of, say, like the parents of people my age grew up in the Depression where you weren't going to do something as frivolous as write stories and poems, get a job, you know. So there weren't a lot of places to go with this if you felt the need to write. And again, I may stand corrected. I didn't know that I could say, hey, I've got these poems. Where can I read these, or who can read these for me aside from an English teacher? You know, we had like a school magazine and all that stuff. So yeah, and it's funny because speaking of like Elizabeth Bishop, who passed time through Revere, and Sylvia Plath and Horatio Alger, these are all Revere folk. But if you look at Kevin's poetry or Roland's writing, it deals with a lot of the same stuff. Working class, gambling, a lot of real obsessive, compulsive.
Because it was right near Wonderland, right?
Wonderland, Suffolk Downs.
Right. Remember that movie, Last Stop Wonderland?
Last Stop Wonderland. But you had the dog track, you had the horse track. Bookies all over the place. So it was an interesting
greasy
place.
Food.
Greasy
Kelly's
food.
roast beef.
Wonderful food. I don't know how we all, didn't have clogged arteries at like age 13.
Yeah. But so, we've got about 12 minutes, and so I'd like you to read from your collection, Uncanny Valley,
Sure.
from Big Table Books.
Thank you.
And all right, whatever you choose. Well, you might as well start off with that Tide poem since I
Okay,
mentioned
Devil
it.
Tide, sure. Sure. Let's see, what page is that? I'm sorry, I should have marked these out. Tree the mountain, evil field. Oh, that's in the last one, I think. Yep, page 110. My last section deals a lot with that, with addiction, compulsion, and that does play a role in the Devil Tides. The Devil Tides. There are rocks off the coast shaped like eggs. There are rocks shaped like misery and one like a skull. Bodies have washed up on the slippery barnacles at low tide. There is a brown island I can walk to from the crushed shell beach. If you are born up here, you know sadness and you know gulls. You know how a good clamshell makes a good ashtray. You know the land is as flat as any place where men change into wolves under the moon. You know that. Resent everything, for it's the only way you don't forget. Resent everything you love. It keeps you anchored to the beach. Fishing boats bring in cargo from pink and white tulip fields in the Orient. The heroin is cheap and it is hot. Just past King's Beach, the seaweed is red, clogged with pennies or fingers. It smells even in the cold. Too many villages are connected by thin causeways pinched on either side by the Atlantic. Devil tides cut them off from the world. Folks go out and never come back. There are empty graves engraved in marble in big churches. Folks go out hot and turn blue. No one ever forgets except how to measure. If you knew this, you'd never ask anything more of me. Okay. So I think I'm going to read a couple about my parents. As I said to you, they both they play a big part in this.
Yeah, they both died in close succession.
In close succession, my mother Alzheimer's and my father just, I joke about it. He just.
Often when the wife, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Just kind of. Was just really sort of baffled, disillusioned by the world. So this poem, A Mother of Dolls, is about my mother. Her last year, she was in a nursing home right up in Marblehead near my sister and me, which was great. And it's written in 5 tiny small parts, and I'll just hesitate. I'll stop. I'll pause between each one. They're not numbered or anything. Excuse me. A mother of dolls. The supply closet has ice cream colored face cloths to fold and unfold and pile, Lysol, gallons of it, diapers, bins of baby dolls, full-sized, undressed with cloth bodies and molded plastic heads. These babies are comforted. They never cry. The women on this floor hold them to their chests and rock them. They mother well. They fold the cloths over and over and pile. Almost all widows, they're that strong still in their hearts. A month or so after my mother became a widow, she picked up her first doll. My father had died baffled. I used this as a marker of time. She was still married, or maybe not, in her mind. 2 women fought over a soft, multicolored pastel blanket to swaddle their dolls. One pulled hard, but the other held on so that their wheelchairs rolled and swung through the rec room. My sister called after a visit. Ma has a doll. The day was pastel colored, aqua sky, tangerine tiger lilies, yellow sunlight as I drove up the last time I hoped she flew by and passed me whole. How we doing on time?
You have plenty of time.
Okay. I want to read this one.
7 minutes.
Okay, this is about my father, and there's a line in there where I mentioned loving the president now. And I remember January O'Neill, when she read this, she said, what if in years, if people are reading this poem and they're thinking, as I love President Christie or President Trump now. So I want you to know, the whole world, President Obama was president when I wrote this.
Okay.
I'm going to have to put a note in there. So horrifying. Supper during Watergate. My father sat at the head of the table, dusky as Nixon's 5 o'clock shadow. He glared at my older sister, who would not look at him, would not look up or pull her straight black hair away from her face. I had yet to give up my stretchy headbands, and the baby was still in pigtails then. Supper during Watergate was not much different than any other supper, except that one night I hid the microphone of a cassette tape player between the copper mugs my mother lined on the shelf. Cups so unsafe to use, the oxide leached into the fronds of the spider fern she planted. She hung the copper tray above the dinner table, and it glowed like a penny tossed down a well. In Korea, it is believed that ghosts will come to the sound of chopsticks clicking porcelain bowls. They are so hungry, they will just mill around waiting. They will come even if they hear your teeth click. That was the sound we heard when I played the tape back before dessert, and the hum of the tape circling and the sound of the hearings from the television. My father loved the president then as I love the president now. He felt victimized as Nixon, and when he got up without asking to be excused, he spilt his water all over the table. The knots in the wood grew long under the drops, and they looked to me like sad faces. My mother, sweet and reaching as rosemary wood, stretched across to wipe up the mess. It's Watergate, she said. She said I shouldn't upset him even more. That was a hard time in our household. Well. Yes, it was. One more?
Well, you got 6 minutes, or 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I will do, let's see. Do one about where I'll do the last 2 will be about where I grew up, where I live now. I shouldn't say.
Marblehead?
Marblehead.
I like Revere.
Yeah, I know. It's an interesting town.
But parts of it are working classes, aren't there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It really, I mean, I think people, they look at the neck
Yeah.
and they think all of Marblehead is like that. And it isn't. It's just, it's very regular.
Yeah.
People don't drive down my street to go look at the houses. So.
Yeah.
This is after a poem. Oh, gosh, I always forget the name of it. It's a Rilke poem where he's traveling and he's staying in different hotels. And in every hotel room, he hears somebody playing the violin. And the name of this poem is Hump, or The Weight of Life is Heavier Even Than the Weight of Things, which is a line from Rilke's poem. There's a lady in front of me in a black, shiny as a hearse smart car. We have to stop to let a big old turtle cross the narrow road from the pond to the hill the men in orange vests blow up little by little every day at noon. The lady dangles her arm outside the window. She looks like someone in a car costume coming home from a party she stayed at way too long. It's hard to know when to go, but it's good to keep things close. A man once asked me, "Why don't you tie a mattress to your back? That way you'd never have to leave the bar." I liked the efficiency of that, plus I wanted another drink. The hill will be down any day now, and they will begin to build a new hill, a better one. The lady in the tiny hearse will be home before the blasting and the turtle. Explosives don't deter her. She's seen it all, carries it under her hump. And let's see. All right, I'm going to end with a Revere poem.
All right, there you go.
And this will give
It'll
you
be
an
weather. It will be tomorrow. I hear it's going to be, summer weather.
Yes, yes.
Go out to Revere.
down to the beach. And this happened, I was young, but modern times. But this will give you an idea. There were lots of Marys on everybody's lawn. That's not a stereotype, it was true. Wives.
We still have those in Somerville. There's still
Yeah.
Madonnas. And
Yep. I have a book on all
Yeah.
just all the Madonnas in these towns. Wives. The Madonna in the old lady's yard began to speak. I heard this from my sister and the older girls, and by the next day, everybody knew. At first, the things she did were good. She found lost baseballs, stray cats, told of love and weddings. She blessed the front yard she was in, tomatoes, roses. And the old lady gave them away to the people standing by the fence around the yard who offered bread, locks of hair, cloth from a dead husband's suit and his watch chain, pictures, even one on tin. Then she told who hit the baseball through a window. Then she pointed to a